Hey YouTube, GT40Fan1 here. I'm going to do a video on how to disassemble a Ruger Mark III. I've already got the grips off. It's pretty self-explanatory, just 4 screws that hold the grip on. You're going to need a pin or a punch or a pick or something to remove all the little individual pins in the gun. You will need I use a paper clip. It works really well for the small end to fit down in the mainspring housing. Pull up that little latch. So that's what I use for that. My gun, I've removed the magazine disconnect. There's a couple steps that require you, if you haven't done that, they require you to insert the magazine to be able to pull the trigger to take the gun apart. So I'll try to remember to point those steps out. But so we'll go ahead and start here. First things first, do a safety check. There's no magazine in it. There's nothing in the chamber. Okay. So first thing you'd have to do is, if you don't have the magazine disconnect, insert an empty magazine, pull the trigger, remove the magazine. Okay. Now the pressure's been taken off of the mainspring in here. So we'll go ahead and pry out that lever. Okay. Mainspring housing will slide out. Grab it, and it will pop out. Sometimes those are hard to remove. You might have to use a little mallet up top, pound it out. So next thing, you've got the hammer needs to be pulled back. That way the bolt will slide out. So you have to tip the gun upside down, and that makes it where the hammer arm that compresses the mainspring won't get stuck down inside. So now that bolts out. Some guns require that you use a mallet to break the barrel away from the frame. Mine doesn't, so I just press back. Okay. That's a little dust shield I've made to cover the trigger assembly. I've covered that in a different video. So now the frame and the barrel receiver assembly are separated. That's as far as this the barrel receiver comes apart. We'll head to the bolt here. Take the recoil spring. It just pops right out. Alright. Now you have your firing pin. And that's held by this firing pin retainer pin. And that just pushes out either way, it doesn't matter. Left to right, right to left. And the firing pin will fall out. Then down in this little channel in here, there's a spring and a little metal keeper. Okay? And that's as far as I ever take that apart. I mean, you can take the extractor out. Pretty much pointless. Unless you really, really, really need to clean it. And it's gotten really dirty. Mine hasn't gotten to that point yet. Alright, on to the frame, trigger, and the hammer assemblies. I start with the hammer. From right to left, drive the hammer pin out. Okay. So the hammer pin will come out. Your bolt lock lever. Okay. And pull the pin out. Okay. So this is your safety selector. You need to be careful. You can lose this little detent pin on the safety selector, okay? It'll go flying. Here is the trigger plunger spring. Alright? Then you've got your hammer. And mine is a little more simpler than a lot of the firearms. I've removed the magazine disconnect and the magazine disconnect spring, and I've installed this bushing. And this bushing is a press fit, so it doesn't flop around, it just stays in there. It really simplifies taking down the gun and putting the gun back together, and I think it makes the trigger pull better. So prevents a lot of wobble. I reviewed that also in a later video. Okay, so now your hammer assembly's out, and you're left with the sear and the sear spring. So you can drive the pin out, holding those in. So you got the sear pin, sear itself, and the sear spring. Alright. Now, the trigger assembly, there's a spring down in here that's on the right hand side of the gun, and that goes into a detent on the trigger pin. So I push down on it with a fingernail, and from left to right drive the pin out. Okay, so there's the pin. I don't know, you can kind of see the detent on that pin just a little bit. So, okay, so now the bolt lock comes out. Trigger and trigger bar, those will separate. And you've got the bolt lock plunger and the spring. Alright. Now that's as far as I take the gun apart. You can remove the trigger pin lock spring. It just pulls aft, pivots out. And then you can remove the magazine ejector by undoing the screw, and that'll pull out. That has a spring in it, in the magazine ejector or release, and that'll go flying if you're not careful too. Yeah. A lot of small parts on these guns. So that's as far as I take it apart. You can also remove this magazine well plug. There's no real reason to unless it gets really dirty down in there. So that is that's all the parts inside of this gun. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave any questions, comments, likes, and dislikes. Let me know how I'm doing. And please subscribe. Have a good one.